If you want to make a film but you can't film anything, can you still make a film? Short answer is yes. In this video, we're going to talk about all the different ways you can make a documentary, video essay, or a film without actually filming anything. We'll cover everything from story and writing to cohesion, branding, and making sure everything fits together, different visuals and when and how you can use each one, mood, music, and audio, sound design, all that sort of stuff, and of course, production and recording of all of it. And we'll do it all in this many minutes. First, let's talk about the most important thing, and that's storytelling. Video essays might be the most popular form of making a film without filming anything, on YouTube especially, but at their core, they're a story. They should still work as a written blog post, or they should still work as a written story, and adding visuals is just icing on the cake. Let's remember the history of stories all started with telling story from one person to another before we had the written word and any way to write anything down, and only recently in history have we had the ability to tell stories visually. And not just tell stories visually, but supplement the story with visuals. This is why things like doodle drawing videos and animated story times have done so well. They capture the audience's attention with the visuals and help supplement the story that they're telling. This is the opposite and slightly in contrast to the advice you're generally hearing in filmmaking, which is show, don't tell, but this is a different style, and this is more about supplementing what you're telling with what you're showing. I can't emphasize enough how important the story is here and how good the writing has to be if you're doing a documentary or any kind of film that's relying heavily on the narration and only using visuals as a supplement. This is why anytime someone's critiquing a film or a movie, like on Rotten Tomatoes, they're generally complaining about the plot and the character and how the story was bad, and no one's really complaining about how the slider shot looked or the cinematography. Even though that's where, as filmmakers, most of us put our energy to making sure that our shots look good and we have banger B-roll, but the story is the most important thing. So what about those visuals? What about all those things that you can add on top of the narration that help tell your story? This is where we can take a look at the video submitted by David Douglas Stewart, which is all about his origin, how he got started as a documentarian. And being a journalist documentarian, he has tons of archive footage that he can leverage in this video, but there's plenty of places where he uses different visual techniques to kind of build on top of that. And we'll get into that in just a second. So a good film uses the visuals to help tell the story of what's being said in the narration, while a great video essay, a great documentary, or a great film uses those visuals to help enhance or add subtext to what's being said in the narration. Let me explain. In the first example of a good video essay, you can simply find visuals that match what you're saying in the narration, and that's fine, that's good, that explains what's going on. But in a great example, you can build on what you're saying by showing more detail. What you show on screen can either be in complete contrast to what you're saying and use that as an opportunity to convey sarcasm or as a visual joke, or you can build upon it with extra detail if you're recounting a conversation and you want to add all that text in like a text message image or something like that. Those are all good ways to enhance or kind of leverage what you're saying and use that visual medium as extra space to tell more of the story. And now in this video by David, we can see there's a lot of instances of places where he's had archival footage that he can put on top of what he's saying that really help tell that story. Being that he's a journalist and that he's kept tons of archive throughout his life, he can really show examples when he's talking about when he was a kid making skate videos. He actually has those skate videos still, so that makes it really easy. But for all the places where he doesn't, he does a really good job of using text or using newspaper clippings or screenshots of things in a cohesive way, which we'll talk about in just a second. He uses all of them in a visually engaging way, but also, like we talked about, he uses that space to add detail to what he's saying. That may be a lot, but in any case, just keep in mind that what you show on the screen doesn't have to be a direct representation of what you're saying. So maybe get to a part in the story where you want to talk about a conversation or something that happened in the past. Those are all great opportunities to use text on screen, and the more creative ways that you can use text, the better. From report cards and comments from his teachers, different IDs that he's had, rejection letters, all kinds of different documents are all treated in a kind of different way that really work with this narrative and help keep things engaging rather than just having the same text just being placed on the screen throughout the whole thing. Now, there's nothing wrong with using a whole bunch of text in your film. Just be careful that when you do use a lot of text, that it all matches and it's all using the same font. Stick to using one font, maybe two fonts if you're good at font pairing, but make sure that the whole overall look of your video is nice and cohesive. If you were to zoom out and take a big high-level look at all of the visual aspects of your film, all the shots, all the graphics, all the text, does it look like an eclectic jumbled mess of a collage? Or is it a nice and organized mood board with a cohesive color palette and a font system that matches? Good films will have a consistent look, and great films will have a distinctive look. And part of having a distinctive brand is using sound and music in a recognizable way. Do you use the same sound effects and same music in all of your videos if you're doing a series? Or if you're not doing a series, how are you using individual sound effects and different clips of music in the same film at different parts to trigger different moods and to represent different characters? If you want to deep dive down the rabbit hole of video essays on music, leitmotifs, and how to use them in film, I highly suggest checking out the YouTube channel Sideways. I'll put a link down in the description. There's a whole bunch of information in there about music theory, but to keep things simple, instead of just grabbing a bunch of tracks that sound good and sprinkling them all over your timeline, pick one track for one mood and one track for a character and try to reuse those in different parts of your film to help tell your story and keep things nice and cohesive. When you do that, not only are you creating audio cues for your audience so they know what's going on, but you break up that monotonous monotone with some dynamic rhythm into your film, and that helps with the pacing of your video and with overall retention. Now, we can't talk about music and sound effects without talking about audio and the production. You've probably heard this before, but audio is much more important than video. We're much more forgiving with poor video quality than we are with poor audio quality. You could watch a really low quality video as long as it has good quality audio, but if I sounded like I was in a tin box and it was all reverby and broken up, you'd have a really hard time listening to this video, and you definitely wouldn't be sticking around up until this point. When it comes to documentaries and video essays, we can be a little bit more forgiving on the audio quality if we know that what we're listening to is coming from the source of the audio. Maybe it's someone else's cell phone recording or a piece of archival footage. When we mix that in, that's okay. And this video does a good job of that too. But the audio that you're producing, that you're recording and narrating with, that should be of high quality, or at least really good quality. Without turning this into a how to record video, I just want to leave you with two things to consider when you're recording narration. And the first thing is to be okay with doing multiple takes. Don't worry so much about writing the whole thing out perfectly and then recording it in one single take. You can record things one paragraph at a time or even one sentence at a time and then piece them together in the edit. The recommendation here though is that whenever you're doing retakes, to make sure that the environment that you're recording in is always the same. And if you're using a dynamic microphone or something that you're holding, make sure that the distance between your mouth and the microphone are always the same. Keeping a consistent recording environment means that you can do a whole bunch of different takes and it all sound the same, and you won't have to worry about messing with things in post-production to try to level it all out. And when it comes to the recording environment, don't stress about having the perfect setup so much. There's tons of different videos here on YouTube that show you how to make a home studio setup, but at the bare minimum, if you just take a bunch of pillows and stack them around your microphone with a pillow fort, you have a quality enough environment to make good recordings for your voiceovers. As long as the audio quality is clear and consistent, then the viewer can focus on the story, which is the most important part. And if you're worried about leveling up your storytelling and you want to get better at it, try this exercise. Anytime someone tells you about their dream, you know it's going to be a boring conversation because the story that they're going to tell you probably isn't good. But if you can get to a point in your writing and your storytelling where you can tell someone about your dream and keep it engaging and entertaining, then you're off to a good start. As filmmakers, we often focus too much and get distracted on getting the best slider shot and the cinematography, and while that's important, the story is even more important. And if you're here looking to level up your storytelling and get better, it's a long process that we're always working on. I'm always making videos about it. You can check out this one here that YouTube thinks you'll enjoy, and if you've enjoyed this kind of storytelling breakdown, you can consider hitting that subscribe button. If you made it this far, consider hitting that like button, and until next time, bye for now.